My name is Bashart Malik. I am 48 years old and I was born in Bristol. So, like a lot of families who migrated back in the 50s, 60s post Second War, the floodgates were open that people were invited from around the world, from the Caribbean, from Africa, from South Asia. My family were some of those people who came over. My father arrived first, and so did my uncle, with a view to rebuild the country and be mine workers, and that was the beginning of the journey. Growing up in Bristol was challenging and at the same time really beautiful. It allowed young Asians to explore the UK and step outside of their own community at times. At the same time, the community I've grown up in is also a very beautiful community, full of rich culture, heritage, history, and a lot of knowledge that I've embodied and I still exercise today because I'm proud to be a Pakistani born in Britain. So from reflection, when I think of Bristol in the early days and think of diasporic communities, a lot of these communities were pushed into parts of the city where it was either poor housing, there was low income, no jobs, poor education. However, with all of that upheaval, people found a way of healing through it by connecting and embracing one another and understanding these hardships were just not felt in your own community, but in lots of different communities. For example, the 1980s uprising wasn't just an uprising that was led by people from the Windrush generation or the Caribbean community. It was also felt in other communities who joined alongside the Caribbean community to support endless years of oppression as a way of fighting back against the institutions. And that also taught me that actually to make anything of this life in this country growing up, you have to fight for what you believe in and to move forward and to get ahead and to be better than who the label you've been given by the government is, to then fight back and grow and create your own opportunities. And that's what Bristol was like for me back in the 80s and the 90s. And now today, I feel that I've been valued and I'm respected as a human being for what I have to offer this country. Thinking about my years growing up in Bristol, I compare the idea of home life versus my life now today. And I also understand that some of the restrictions and the holding on to the next generation was a safety net for the elders. They had to do that because they arrived in a very hostile place. There was a lot of negative attitudes towards the elder generation, and their only defense and mechanism to hold on to that was to keep the second generation and the generations after that close to the community and to their home. And that was one, it felt really comforting to have that, but two, you also as a human being are aware that actually there is life outside of my home, but how do I access that without creating a fence, or how do I engage with other communities without then upsetting the elders? And that ended up bringing lots of upheavals. At the same time, over the years, it's created a lot of healing as well, because I'm not a criminal. I don't engage in criminal activity. I don't engage in terrorist activities. I'm not connected to extreme viewpoints. I'm just a human being, and I'm rational, and I think balanced. I think in a balanced way, just like any other culture. And I feel that really that idea, that belief in myself has come from the protection in the home. So I really value where I come from and what my elders have offered me, even if I don't practice some of my cultural beliefs. I still keep those close to my heart because that's my strength, and that's why I'm able to do what I do now today. So growing up then, people used to say Bristol is shit. Like, it's just a dump. This city is just full of absolute shit everywhere. I mean, you can edit that out if you want. So I would walk through streets where needles were on the floor and prostitution was rife. You know, there was gangs, both on both sides, Caribbean gangs, South Asian gangs. Then the Somalians moved in. Then there were Somalian gangs. And this sort of territorial ownership had only came from hardship and the need to survive. However, I felt this is only going to bring one outcome for me, and that's either I'm going to end up in prison or someone's going to be injured, and likely it could end up being me. At the same time, that aggressive way of being in a group was also threatening to other communities and cultures, and that was again a way of protecting ourselves against extreme racism, because Bristol now today feels like a very friendly, smiley, happy city, the place everyone wants to live in. It cares about the environment, it cares about race relations, it exercises its right to stand up and campaign against oppression, not just here but around the world. Then no one stood up for any of us, we stood up for ourselves. And that brought a lot of negative representation when it comes to the mainstream media. And being involved in criminal activity is something the media always latched onto when it came to diasporic communities, especially South Asian and Caribbean communities. We were always negatively represented. There was never something positive that was said about the Muslim community or the Sikh or the Hindu community or the Caribbean community. It was always seen as aggressive. Our expressions on our faces always seemed aggressive, even when we were making no expression at all. And that left me feeling really vulnerable and insecure around other communities and cultures, because growing up in Bristol as a teenager, people will ask you, where are you from? And I'll say, I'm Pakistani. Oh, that must be a disappointment. I'd be like, why? I'd laugh at them. I'd be like, why? Oh, well, you know, it's not just full of terrorists and men who control their women, or men who control everything and they are in control, and it's so sort of backwards. And I thought, well, hasn't that been just history in general? Men have always controlled everything, even here today. You know, you think of colonial attitude and you think of the days of the colonies, that was all led by men. So how can now what you're seeing in the press be any different to what is already there, what's already been taught by colonizing nations to the rest of the world? Why do you think it exists? Why do you think that control, dominance and that attitude exists? And they'd get really offended, and I'd lost friends and I offended friends. But at the end of the day, you can't just judge and label someone just because you feel the truth is what the mainstream media tells you. You should hear it from the first person, the lived experience. And that's what I've always tried to do, even now today in my work. A lot of challenges were faced on both sides. Racism, first-hand racism on my part, being humiliated by groups of boys on bikes and being you know, just, I'm not going to go into the details, but yeah, it was total humiliation. And then humiliated in front of your sister and your siblings. And for me, that's a hard one to swallow, really, when you think, all I'm doing is I'm crossing over from St. Paul's into Easton, and I'm having to go through this war zone to get from one household to another household. And it was this threat every day that you'd have to go through. And then what does a young child do? Ultimately, they're going to learn how to defend themselves. And that defense is not going to be something that's just soft, excuse me, can you let me pass? It's going to come with physical and aggressive, violent means to be able to then feel, you can't do this to me. I'm tall enough and I'm big enough now that I'm going to overpower you. But again, all we were doing then, we were just perpetuating this cycle of violence. And it wasn't that the people perpetuating it were were seen as the original kind of ones who decided that actually they were able to be racist, and they were able to say racist language, call us all kinds of things, called the P word, the N word, as though it's part of the English vocabulary. Whereas if we were to do something and we would say something derogatory towards our white counterparts, it was always negatively portrayed, as though these barbaric animals who have come over, who are taking our jobs and stealing our jobs and are racist or are rapists. It was just all, again, misinformation even then in the 80s and 90s. And then what came after that was really innovative, because actually the UK government and the UK economy was suffering. It's thanks to South Asian shopkeepers from both sides, from the Sikh Hindu side and the Pakistani side, who actually kept this country propped up. But no one ever talks about that. And I'm not going to say that it's all sugar-coated, because, yeah, there are issues within our own communities we need to resolve. And those issues are still remain today. And our leaders are the ones who want to keep us apart. And I feel that the past is almost catching up with us again today, and some of us are blind to what we need to do to change that, especially in this country, because we feel we live in a democracy. However, I feel the word democracy is used just like in the name of religion is used in war, that democracy is now used to just convince someone else that actually someone from another community is not democratic, then they shouldn't be allowed to live here. And that's wrong, because we're all human beings, and how we're seen is just what we've been taught, and we all have the ability to change. It's just being given the opportunity to create something that adds more connection and unity amongst all of us as elders, as second generation, third generation, fourth generations coming through. There's a lot of learning to be had from people who've experienced hardship. I'm not going to pretend that there are issues within our cultures and some things need to change, especially when it comes to integration and allowing the younger generations coming up to explore other options and choices that they can make that can improve their life. We don't have to stay under the old guard of tradition and culture and rely on the same jobs, what we've seen as safe year in, year out. That we can change, we can integrate, and we can have the jobs that once we felt were not within reach, they are now. We've got that power to do that. And I'm one of the second generation Pakistani South Asians who really promote inclusivity, and I want to create content. I chose to work, my chosen career is to work in film. And the reason why I chose to work in the film industry is I wanted to change the narrative, and I wanted to create a lens that is honest and it's unfiltered, and it really shows the suffering and what people of different cultures go through living in the country they've served for throughout their whole life. And I think we can all do that, and we can all engage young generations in creativity and giving them a voice through film, through music, through arts, because creativity is really powerful, and we've got a lot to share about our own cultural heritage, which is just rich in art, rich in poetry, and none of us talk about it. Why? Because it was never celebrated, it was never seen as something you can eat from. And that for me is really sad, because all we see is the bad parts which are represented, but there are so many good layers, and that needs to be discussed. It needs to be showcased and represented on film. And within our own communities, there could be the most talented pianist, there could be the most amazing poet, there could be the most amazing storyteller, designer. It's endless, but we just haven't discovered it because we've lived under what the elders felt was safe back 50, 60 years ago. And now it's time for the change. It's the new wave. When I chose to do my degree, it was seen as a bad choice, and I was ridiculed for it. I moved to London, I broke away from my community, and it felt like I'd sort of disowned my culture, and a lot of negative narratives were being fed to my mum from all sectors of my family, from different generations, from extended relations to first cousins, second cousins. And it's really disheartening to know that happened, but at the same time I get it as well. It's unsafe to break away, it's unsafe to do something radical, to move away and to change the narrative and to explore new areas of the world and to maximize everything this planet has to offer us as individuals, regardless of the culture, our skin color, and our identity. Fast forward, I've done really well from going to do my degree, and I just want to make the point. The village I come from is a very remote village in Pakistan. It's in the region called Azad Kashmir, which is not close to the Kashmir border, but it's Azad Kashmir doesn't have to adhere to the rest of Pakistan's law. Even though it's within the country, it still has a border checkpoint. So it's lawless in a way. And that lawlessness really, you wake up to what the reality is where you come from. And last year I discovered that all my family keep guns in the house. And not just one, but 3 or 4 sometimes. And I was like, wow, okay, this is revelation, because I just wasn't really fully awake then, or maybe I wasn't told these things. But it just demonstrated again the survival mechanism and where my community come from and why they have maybe behaved or acted in the way they were and did back then, because they come from a place where it's everyone for themselves and anyone can take anything, and unless you're willing to defend yourself, you're pretty much going to end up broke, homeless, with nothing. So that mentality, it made everything was clearer when I went on a trip to Pakistan last year. And it all 40, whatever odd years on, it was just clearer why they behaved the way they behaved. And even though it's shown in the mainstream media as an extreme culture or extreme practices that are not within the British value system, at the end of the day, what is the British value system? What is it? Is it British, or is British values everyone? Are we all British, or is it just adhering to what the British values mean to someone who's of white skin tone, who is maybe from, I don't know, a part of England, I don't need to say which part, but someone who's grown up in England, they've got their whole history is from a white heritage, maybe they've come from a colonial background. Is that British? For me, British today is me, is myself. I'm sat here, I'm British, my feet and my hands and everything, my skin is a part of this soil. I've arrived here, and the ground, we all come from the same ground. The mud, the soil, the ocean, the sea, we are all the same. It's just geography and climate is what makes us different. So it's, in the end, we're just all the same. We're just one human race. We just look different. And that should be British values. It shouldn't be decided on, someone in power shouldn't decide what those values are. It should be the people who decide what they see fit as British values to be taught in schools, and to be then, used in a way that can create a much more inclusive nation where we're not divided, we don't have unconscious biases towards one another, there's not the slight gaze to someone who's wearing a burqa. Maybe that's her choice. We talk about freedom, democracy, that we all have the choice to practice the religion or the belief we feel passionate about. If someone works in a high-spec modern office block, maybe it's Meta, for example, And maybe is someone who wants to pray, who wants to roll out the mat. They want to pray. They should be allowed to pray. They should be in that space. That should be respected. Maybe someone has dreadlocks. They shouldn't have to then cut off their dreadlocks if that's their choice. That's someone's choice to have that. They're not a threat. Just going back again to the burqa or the hijab. That slight gaze. What if you were the person wearing it? What if you could experience that? How would you feel being the person giving the slight gaze? Because it's really traumatic for people to go through that. And a lot of my work now is about changing that narrative. Some of it is heartbreaking, and I just want to show that there's a lot more of what we have to offer this country, and we can all do it together, regardless of skin colour, cultural belief, postcode, or career choice. That we've all got a part to play, and if we play it together, we're just going to create a better world. We're going to stop the wars, and we're going to stop all of this nonsense happening all over the country and all over the world. So yeah, going back to my degree, it was an interesting journey to move away and to live in another city, to find myself and discover a new me. For my mum, it was really challenging because their whole idea of a career is either you become a taxi driver, you have a shop, or you're going to go and do something like a doctorate and become a doctor, or become a solicitor. Those are the top. That's like the top of the food chain. So to do arts and become a filmmaker was like seen as just complete bonkers. I did a BA Honours Photo Media degree. It was a journalist degree, but focusing on different elements of media. My interest was photojournalism, using photography and the power of the image and what it can tell you. One image can speak 1,000 words, or it can just speak volumes depending on what the image is and what's in there. Just the beautiful composition can just say so much. But my interest was then sort of divulging into other areas, and it was kind of moving away from the love of photography, and discovered film was just like photography, but actually there were moving parts to it, and you can just do more with the story you want to tell. So I specialised in the film part of my degree and continue that. And then I ended up staying in London after my degree, which again was hard for the family because they thought I might move back after 3 years. But I decided to explore London, develop a career, got the career with a new media company in Brick Lane, and that was amazing again, to suddenly be paid for the degree I've just studied whilst I was still doing the degree. In my final year I got this job and I was earning really good money, and it felt like I was living this weird and surreal dream that wasn't actually happening, but it was. And then I again feed that back to the family that this is happening, but no one believed me for a long time. That was the crazy bit. So I stopped telling them for my achievements. I just kept going and thought, right, it's okay. I could just tell my friends, and my friends were always proud of me, and they were like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing, you're going to do great things. But again, the void of the family not really understanding what I was involved in was quite bonkers at the time. And I was just on this constant mission of trying to tell them what I did on a day-to-day basis, but they couldn't quite get it. They just didn't understand what it was, because no one in the community had ever experienced anything outside of the jobs they knew. And at the time, I was the first person from my village to have a degree. No one else had ever gone to university. I mean, since then, lots of people have gone, especially from my family, which is great. But coming back to the journey, that then I'd start freelancing and doing lots of different types of work, and that was still great. But again, no connection with the family. It was until I moved back to the southwest, the West Country, and then I started connecting with production companies in Bristol, and then I had a commission, and the film was called What Do You See? and it was based on the journeys of Muslim women who are active, who are doing great work in their communities, and it was about spaces and reshaping those spaces that they weren't just built for the needs of men, but also served the purpose of what women required in a cultural space and for kids. And then the film was complete, and we had a little film festival, and then it was shown on ITV, and my brother was watching the TV, and then the credits had rolled up, and he said, "Oh, Mum, that's Bashart's film on the television." She's like, "What? It's like really confused. It was really like just the connection of watching television to your own family is just so far removed that she couldn't quite believe it. And then I invited her to a screening, because we had a culture screening where we invited mosque leaders from Birmingham and Bristol to come together, and women who are actively doing amazing work in their communities to come. And my mum came to the watershed in her wheelchair and watched the film on the big screen. And it was like a really sort of like a full circle experience to be in that space, and for her to see the film on this big screen, and then I'm on the panel, and the director of the film, and she was really proud, and it was like an amazing journey and experience. And it kind of, even though I didn't display it, it just sort of brought tears to my heart internally to know that she kind of can see what I do now. It's just there, the evidence was there, and it sort of shaped and changed the ideas and the aspirations of the younger generations, because my sister had children, and I had nieces and nephews, and they were just, for them it was like a real game changer that they've got an uncle who's done this, and then now it's inspired them. They've done degrees at UWE and Bristol University, and they're doing really amazing jobs. One is head of AI and developing AI systems for the UK's Lloyds Bank, the whole UK-wide branch. The other is head of finance at UWE for the Bashart campus, and another, he's just got an amazing job as well. And it's a really amazing journey to show that, as well as integrating, we can still hold on to who we are, but we can be bigger and better, and we can grow and explore other areas that our parents just found unsafe to do so then, because they were met with so much oppression and prejudice. The whole thing of you smell of garlic or you stink, things like that were really harmful and traumatic for those communities growing up in the UK. Or, other communities would say, you smell like this, or you guys eat this, or I'm not going to go into any more because it feels really negative, but it's like even humiliating someone and making them spit in front of you, or spit on their sibling, or doing something really stupid like that for the entertainment, just for the entertainment factor. But the harm that did was really angered. It really angered us as a community, and it created more this perpetuating again the violence in a way that became explosive in some situations. But we've learned that actually that's just not the way forward. And if we want to improve, and if we want to be seen as people who are rational and we can control our temper, we have to grow out of that way of being, because that's all the elders saw, and that's what they needed to do to survive, because they came from a place which was colonized then by, in India was, the British did very, very well out of it, unfortunately. And what that wealth that has prospered this country, obviously we are benefiting from that. I'm not ignoring that, but I'm not saying I want to benefit from colonialism. But what I'm saying is, what was taken from that land and then divided, people have benefited here, and now we are the generations still alive. We've got the other generations coming up, and holding on to whatever, taking back control in Brexit or British values needs to be redefined. What does that mean to someone, I don't know, who lives in a council flat or someone who voted for Brexit? What does that mean to you? Have you got a friend who's from a different culture? Do you speak to them? Do you get on with them? You probably like them. But how about maybe liking others alongside the one person you like from another culture? It can be, it can be amazing. It can just open up your world, and vice versa. There can be a shared way. It can be a two-way benefit that you might open up the mind of someone else who feels scared to talk to someone from that community who's maybe got the big British St George's flag outside, or the you know Great Britain. What is Great Britain is great because it's been great for what it's done historically, and that can be really traumatic for those people who've suffered at the hands of that greatness. And now we need to create a world where we're not creating more trauma and anger and pain. So coming back to the degree, coming back to my journey, for my mum to see that, and for my brother then to come to the cinema to watch a feature film, which I was the second unit DOP on, again, that's an amazing experience because, it's like a big set, actors like Virginia McKenna, I can't remember, just who's the cast. So yeah, my brother had accompanied me to the View on the release of a feature film, which was an amazing experience, and it had Bernard Hill, Virginia McKenna, Phil Davis, Mark Williams from Harry Potter, some amazing stellar cast, all shot in Bristol. And he just said, that's really amazing. I can't believe that you managed to do that. The film looks crazy. It looks like it was a crazy time, and it was, because all the action and drama and big effects. It looks really amazing to see it, because as people from different cultures, we're not really in the film industry, so we only experience it as a viewer, as a consumer. We're not in that world. That it looks really spectacular and just explosive, but to be there and be part of that creative process, it makes your world feel like there's just a whole new world to explore when it comes to creative industries. As a South Asian person who has grown up in the UK, so coming away from your community and opening up new doors and new experiences might result in you choosing to maybe not be as present in your own community as you once were. And that could then create doubt and insecurity around community members and your commitment to the community. That might happen, and no one can choose to not have that happen, because in the end, to experience something fully, you have to be open to actually connecting with other communities, and maybe what they do socially, or how they dress, or the music they choose to listen to. So you have to have an open mind. It can't just be a one-way street that you decided, well, actually this is what I'm comfortable with and this is what I'm going to do because I'm from this community and we don't do that. At the same time, it doesn't mean you have to let go of your own identity, because who you are is what's been given, is what the universe has given you as a human being. And that shouldn't be undervalued, and it shouldn't be discounted just because you think that, it's not seen as a really cool thing to be that person in these other little social networks that I've got, because of the misrepresentation of what they think of the religion or the community, or what they think of rights here for, different groups. However, I don't feel any less Pakistani than I did since the days growing up in Bristol in a Pakistani household. I'm proud of my skin colour, and I'm proud of my identity and the place I come from in terms of my heritage, and I never want to let go of that. I never want to feel that it's negative and it's bad, because then I'm just creating this idea that I'm not a very good human being, or I don't, I'm not valued, and to say that, oh, I come from a place that has bad attitudes towards particular communities, or the religion is not cool, or the religion is seen like this, or we're seen as terrorists. That's for you to choose, because the truth is clear when you uncover it, and you create your own story, that you research it and you understand the truth. And the truth is not what you're being told in the mainstream media. The truth is at home. And if you come from a place where there is love and there is support and compassion, you'll rise above it, and you'll embrace who you are and where you come from. And for me, I've held that close to my heart in all the years and all the different journeys and the countries I've seen and travelled, and all the different kind of layers of work I've done. I've kept that close to my heart, that I'm a British-born Pakistani, and I'm really proud to be that person. I've had Indian friends, both Sikh and Hindu. I've had friends from China. I've had African friends. I've had friends from the Caribbean. I've had some of my best friends are white British, and I feel proud to know all of these different people. I'm the Latinos. I have a lot of fun with Latinos. They show you a very good time. I'm just going to be very honest about that. And that's amazing. At the same time, I might go to a Hattam at the mosque, and even having that social time and seeing the elders and everyone together, it's really beautiful, sharing food and breaking bread together, because life is all about connecting. And if that happens through food, or that happens through what we choose to wear and dress, then let that happen. You don't have to decide that you might choose to pray 5 times a day. You might choose to do that, and that's fine as well. And if you choose not to do that, that's also fine. But it doesn't mean to say you're any less Pakistani, or I feel I'm any less Pakistani because I don't choose to pray 5 times a day. I still practice my faith. I don't practice it holistically, and I didn't dedicate my time to it, but I practice it in a spiritual way that I understand it. All the scriptures and all the learning is still there in my head, and when the time is right and I need to exercise that, I bring that to my community, and I can comfortably sit at the deaf, which is very silent, and there could be chanting and there could be prayers which happen, and I'm comfortable doing that because I'm proud of who I am, and I want to feel that, and I want the community to feel that from me, because they are aware that I don't move in the same circles because I choose not to, and that's fine for me. But also when the time is right and I need to connect with the community, I choose to do that, because if I don't choose to do that, then I have no history, I have no identity, I come from nowhere. And that really is, one, it can be harmful long term, and two, we have all come from difficult places when it comes to the South Asian community. At the same time, we can create a place that we embrace who we are, and we connect with the elders. And I think connecting with the elders is really important, because there's a lot of knowledge and information and teaching you can have from your elders. I think we've forgotten that because life and technology has moved so fast that suddenly it feels like knowledge is not required from hearing the voice of an elder who might have an amazing journey that can enrich and teach you so much about who you are growing up in the UK. I think things like social media and the use of mobile phones make it really difficult to engage in conversations for the new generations. And I think that needs to change, because if your elders pass away and the second generations, who knows what could happen, then all that knowledge is gone. And how do you record it? Maybe use technology in a good way. Capture it, capture the voices on your phones. Record them, store them, because in 10, 20 years, when you're old enough, you're going to remember that person and you would have forgotten their voice or what they said to you. But if you capture and record it, that's history. People aren't writing books, they're not telling the stories how they used to 50, 60 odd years ago, because the world is just changing and we need to hold on to who we are. And for me, it's really important for me to still go to the mosque. if I need to, and do an Eid prayer, or to go to the death of a community member and do the prayer for them, to connect with Ramadan, to maybe fast, to understand what that feels like, and to be empathetic to people who are doing it, and to understand why they do it. That's really important. To engage in chanting, cultural chanting, it's really spiritual. It really strengthens who you are, well, who I am, because I'm Pakistani and I've grown up as a Muslim, but I choose to live how I choose to live now, and that's fine, and that's respected by my own community. And I feel strength from the fact that I don't want to remove my culture from who I am today, because what do I have left then? Have I just totally adopted another way of being and not valued where I come from? It means I don't value the source of my life and my breath, and that's my mum.